Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Luckiest Peach podcast. I'm your host, Rachel, the Lucky Peach. Today, continuing on back to normal schedule. Today is Cult of the Month. If you're new here, Cult of the Month is where I review a cult classic film or a film that has a cult following. Don't ask me what a cult film entails because I don't even know at this point. Because if you've listened to past episodes of Cult of the Month, you'll notice that some of them did really well in theaters and then still had a cult following. But my understanding of cult films was that they didn't perform well, and then over time they developed a cult following. So I don't even know. Don't ask me. But thank you for being here. I don't think I have anything else to announce at the beginning. I usually do, but I don't right now. I am currently planning next year. So if you are a close friend of mine, let me know your birthday and I'll let you choose the episode closest to your birthday, with the exception of Streaming Wars, because there's nothing to choose there. But let me know. I'm working on that. I've already had a few picked out. January is all planned out, but as per usual, I will not be announcing that until the January episode of Streaming Wars. But we're getting everything mapped out now. And for future months, things are subject to change. But I like to have at least the next 3 to 4 months planned out. But anyways, I don't like Christmas, but some Christmas horror films are actually really nice. I like them. The one Christmas movie, Christmas movie that I do enjoy quite a lot is Rise of the Guardians, but I don't even know if that counts as a Christmas movie because it combines a bunch of characters from holidays, although the main character is, Jack Frost. So I don't know. But I quite enjoy that movie. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. But yeah, I think of the Christmas movies that we are discussing this month, there's only 2 of them. This one and then the drunk commentary. They're both horror, so I think that says a lot about what I prefer if I'm going to watch a Christmas movie, because I don't like Christmas much. It's a very harsh reminder of, the love that you don't get from your family and how your family is very dysfunctional and not, that you're not happy, because people associate Christmas with so much happiness and joy and family, and I don't experience that during this time of the year. So it's just a harsh reminder of, the bad things in my life, but, I make the most of it. I'm also not Christian, so I don't particularly like to celebrate Christmas itself. I give gifts, in the vibe of Yule, which is, the holiday that I would be celebrating, or that I am celebrating, that I do celebrate is Yule. But I don't exactly celebrate Christmas. So, anyways, that being said, today we are reviewing Black Christmas from 1974, the original one. It is directed by Bob Clark, written by A. Roy Moore. What else? The official release date was October 11th, 1974. The runtime is 98 minutes, so a little bit of an hour and a half. The budget was $620,000 and it made $4.1 million in the box office. I don't know if that is over time or if that is just right after it released. Yeah, so the original title of the film was Silent Night, Evil Night. I much prefer Black Christmas. He was released in Canada originally, so it's based out of Canada, which actually explains a lot. What else? The story follows a group of sorority sisters who receive threatening phone calls and are eventually stalked and murdered by a deranged killer during Christmas season. It is inspired by the urban legend, The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, and a series of murders that took place in the Westmount neighborhood of Montreal, Quebec. Moore wrote the screenplay under the title Stop Me. The filmmakers made numerous alterations to the script, primarily shifting to a university setting with young adult characters. It was shot in Toronto in 1974 on an estimated budget of $620,000 and was distributed by Warner Brothers in North America. So I'll just get straight into the plot as per usual. An unseen man climbs the exterior of a sorority house where a Christmas party is being held and enters the attic. The house phone rings and Jess answers to discover it is an obscene phone call from a person who has called before. Jess calls the other sorority girls and they listen as the caller rants in strange voices. Barb insults the caller, who in turn promises to kill her. A younger student, Claire Harrison, suggests that the caller could be dangerous before returning to her bedroom. The intruder suffocates Claire with a plastic dress bag and moves her body to the attic. The following morning, Mr. Harrison arrives to pick up his daughter, but she fails to show. Jess explains to her boyfriend, Peter, that she is pregnant and planning to get an abortion, angering Peter, and they agree to discuss it later. In town, Mr. Harrison attempts to report Claire as missing. At the police station, they learn that a young local girl has also vanished while walking home from school. After putting a drunken Barb to bed, Mr. Harrison, Chris, Jess, and Phil help search for the missing girl. Meanwhile, the house mother, Mrs. McHenry, discovers Claire's body and the killer throws a crane hook into her face, hanging and killing her. In the park, the missing girl's disfigured body is found by the police. Jess answers another obscene phone call and decides to file a report with the police, only for Peter to surprise her. He attempts to persuade her into marriage, but she refuses and reaffirms her decision to have an abortion. Peter leaves angrily while Lieutenant Fuller arrives with a telephone lineman to bug the phone. After the police leave, the killer murders Barb with a glass figurine. Jess experiences another unnerving phone call in which the caller restates her argument with Peter. Lieutenant Fuller calls her to say the attempt to trace the call failed and theorizes that Peter could be responsible, but Jess doubts this. Phil is murdered next. Jess gets another phone call in which the killer alludes to some sort of transgression between two children named Agnes and Billy. The call is long enough to be traced, and Sergeant Nash instructs Jess to leave the house immediately as the calls are coming from within the house. Concerned for Barb and Phil, she ventures upstairs where she discovers Barb's and Phil's bodies. The killer appears and pursues her. Jess locks herself in the cellar, only for Peter to appear outside one of the windows. He smashes the window and enters the basement. The police arrive and hear Jess screaming. They discover her barely conscious in the basement with Peter's bloody body next to her. Believing that Peter was the killer, they put Jess to bed in her room and leave her alone in the house with the cops standing outside. The killer's voice is heard from the attic, implying that he is still alive. The still undiscovered bodies of Claire and Mrs. McHenry are seen through the attic window before the house's telephone begins to ring, leaving Jess's fate ambiguous. So, the cast is Olivia Hussey as Jess, Keir Dullea as Peter, Margot Kidder as Barb, John Saxon as Lieutenant Fuller, Marion Waldman as Mrs. McHenry, Andrea Martin as Phil, James Edmund as Mr. Harrison, Douglas McGrath as Sergeant Nash, Arthur Hindle as Chris, Lynn Griffin as Claire, Michael Rapport as Patrick, Leslie Carlson as Bill, Martha Gibson as Mrs. Quaife, John Rutter as a detective, David Clement as Cogan, Julian Reed as Officer Jennings, and Nick Mancuso as Billy / the phone voice. Yes, so the development of the film, I kind of already read that. Oops. Well, so there's more information about the Montreal Murders, actually. In an article for The Telegraph, the murders, which occurred in 1943, were perpetrated by a 14-year-old boy who bludgeoned several of his family members to death. I don't know why we need that information, I guess. Yes, alterations were made towards the original script to make it less of a straightforward slasher film, and I guess gave it more dialogue, and also incorporated more humorous elements into it. I don't know. There weren't that many funny moments to me. I didn't see them. Anyways, yeah. So, Olivia Hussey, who had previously garnered international fame for her role as Juliet in Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, signed on to appear in the film after being told by a psychic that she would make a film in Canada that would earn a great deal of money. Damn. Clark sought Keir Dullea to play the role of Peter based on his performance as Dave Bowman in 2001: A Space Odyssey. The role of Mrs. Mack was offered to Bette Davis, who declined the part. Margot Kidder was cast as the role of Barb, and said she had been attracted to the character because she was wild and out of control and not a conventional leading part. For the role of Claire Harrison, whose murder jumpstarts the film's plot, Toronto gave Lynn Griffin Lynn Griffin was cast after her mother, who was also her casting agent at the time, got her an audition. Gilda Radner was offered the role of Phyllis Carlson. She accepted the part but dropped out 1 month before filming began owing to Saturday Night Live commitments and was replaced by Andrea Martin. The role of Lieutenant Fuller was originally given to Edmund O'Brien. Upon his arrival to set, however, the producers realized he would be unable to fulfill the duties required of the part due to his failing health. John Saxon, who had read the script prior, was called by the producers who offered him the role. He accepted and had to arrive in Toronto from New York City within 2 days to begin shooting. For the role of the film's antagonist, Italian-American actor Nick Mancuso was cast as one of the main voices in the phone call sequences. When auditioning for the role, director Clark had Mancuso sit in a chair facing away from him so as not to see the actor's face. Clark then had Mancuso experiment with different voices in order to come up with one that was right for the character, with Clark later offering him the part. So it was shot on location in Toronto. Yeah. They rented a house for the production, as well as they shot some additional photography at the University of Toronto. Yeah. Yeah, it was released in October of 1974. In the US, though, Warner Brothers released the film in December 20th of 1974. Warner Brothers changed the name to Silent Night, Evil Night, worried that the original title would mislead audiences into believing the film was a blaxploitation movie. That's actually really smart. Good job, Warner Brothers. But they retracted the title after the initial release, restoring it to Black Christmas for subsequent screenings. Yeah. The film, under the title Stranger in the House, was set to make its network television premiere in January 1978. 2 weeks prior to its premiere, the Chi Omega sorority house on the campus of Florida State University in Tallahassee was the scene of a double murder in which 2 Chi Omega sisters asleep in their beds were bludgeoned to death. The killer then went to a nearby room in the sorority house and violently attacked 2 more sleeping co-eds who survived. The killer was later identified as Ted Bundy. Wow. Who is executed for this and other homicides in 1989. Ugh. Fucking Ted, man. Fuck that piece of shit. A few days before the movie was set to premiere on network television, Florida's then governor, Ruben Askew, contacted NBC president Robert Mulholland to request the movie not be shown due to its all-too-similar theme as the murders of sorority sisters by an unknown madman at the Chi Omega sorority house. On Tuesday, January 24th, NBC TV gave several of its affiliates in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama the option of showing an alternate movie, Doc Savage, The Man of Bronze, in place of Stranger in the House. The network said in a statement issued in New York City that it was responding to concern voiced by the affiliates because of the murder of 2 co-eds in a sorority house at Florida State, blah, blah, blah. During its initial release, the film had garnered mixed reviews. H. Weller of the New York Times called it a whodunit that raises the question as to why it was made. That's rude. Variety called the film a bloody, senseless, kill-for-kicks feature that exploits unnecessary violence in a university sorority house operated by an implausibly alcoholic ex-hofer. Its slow-paced, murky tale involves an obscene telephone caller who apparently delights in killing the girls off one by one, even the hapless house mother. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune gave the film 1.5 stars out of 4 and called it a routine shocker that is notable only for indicating the kind of junk roles that talented actresses are forced to play in the movies. Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Times wrote, before it maddeningly overreaches in a gratuitously evasive ending, Black Christmas is a smart, stylish, Canadian-made little horror picture that is completely diverting. It may well be that its makers simply couldn't figure out how to end it. Contemporary reviews have been more positive. On Rotten Tomatoes, Black Christmas holds an approval rating of 71%, with an average rating of 6.26 out of 10. The website's critics' consensus reads, the rare slasher with enough intelligence to wind up the tension between bloody outbursts, Black Christmas offers fiendishly enjoyable holiday viewing for genre fans. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 65 out of 100, indicating generally favorable reviews. Heidi Martinuzzi of Film Threat called the film innovative and praised the leading actresses. TV Guide awarded the film 3 out of 4 stars, writing, although strictly standard fare, the material is elevated somewhat through Clark's skillful handling of such plot devices as obscene phone calls from the killer to the girls via the upstairs phone and a nicely handled twist ending, which provides genuine shock. Author and film critic Leonard Maltin gave the film 2.5 out of 4 stars, calling it bizarre but also praised Kidder's performance as a standout. The Time Out Film Guide noted that the film manages a good slice of old-fashioned suspense. At the Saturn Awards, it was nominated for Best Horror Film. It won 2 Canadian Film Awards for Best Sound Editing and Best Performance by a Lead Actress for Margot Kidder. It has a legacy, for gaining a cult following and is notable for being one of the earliest slasher films. It went on to inspire other slasher films, the biggest one of all being John Carpenter's Halloween. Black Christmas has been included in multiple lists of various media outlets as one of the greatest horror films ever made. The film ranked number 87 on Bravo's The 100 Scariest Movie Moments. It was ranked number 67 in IndieWire's The 100 Best Horror Movies of All Time. Its entry stating, the plot sounds formulaic, but Black Christmas remains timeless thanks to its terrifying and elusive killer Billy, whose backstory is never revealed, as well as a foreboding ending that doesn't offer much hope for the film's final girl. Olivia Hussey told Bravo during an interview about their 100 Scariest Movie Moments series that when she met Steve Martin for the first time, he told her that she starred in one of his favorite films of all time. Hussey initially thought she was referring to Romeo and Juliet, but was surprised when Martin said it was Black Christmas and that he had seen the film 27 times. Jesus Christ. I also noticed we did not get a review from, on Wikipedia, we did not get a review from the Luckiest Peach's least favorite person. I like how I forgot his name. Wow. What the fuck is wrong with me? So much we don't like this person. Shut up. Don't I know y'all gonna make fun of me for this because I forgot his goddamn name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Jesus Christ. Shit. I don't know why the name coming to my mind is Richard Gere. Obviously, it's not fucking Richard Gere. Why am I thinking of Richard Gere? God. Oh my god. Give me a second. Give me a second. Give me a second. Roger Ebert. We did not see a review for the podcast's least favorite critic, Roger Ebert. Let me see. Let me see if he reviewed it. Or if you hear my typing. 1974. Okay, let's see. Let's see if he reviewed it. No, he did not review it. Wow. Gene Siskel was a colleague of him. He was who reviewed it, and I read off his review. Okay. So, an extension of Roger Ebert, I guess. It's not that I'm looking back his review. Yeah, that sounds like Roger Ebert's friend. Anyways, a novelization of the film written by Lee Hayes was published in 1976. A new book chronicling the behind-the-scenes making of the original film is going to be available in 2022. The book will feature new interviews with select original cast members and more, and was written by author Paul Downey of Bloody Flicks and filmmaker Dave Hastings. It will be called It's Me, Billy, Black Christmas Revisited. Obviously, if you've noticed anything in the last few years, it's been remade twice, with both films being completely different. Not completely different, but significantly different from the original. The first remake was directed by Glenn Morgan and was released on December 25th, 2006. It's loosely based on the original film, containing more graphic content and a focus into the past of Billy. Andrea Martin was the only original cast member to appear in the film, and Bob Clark served as an executive producer. I think it being more graphic, is pretty it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, because like a lot of 2000s horror films were incredibly graphic. Like if you look at any of the remakes, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake in the 2000s, you look at The Hills Have Eyes, like they're all incredibly graphic. So that's pretty standard for a 2006 horror film. Another remake was made by Blumhouse Productions, directed and written by Sophia Takal, co-written by April Wolf, and produced by Jason Blum. It released on December 13th, 2019. On May 28th, 2021, a short fan film funded through an Indiegogo campaign was released online with the title It's Me, Billy. It is billed as an unofficial sequel to the original film and picks up the story 50 years later, following the granddaughter of Jess Bradford. That sounds ridiculously unnecessary. There's nothing I hate more than those kinds of sequels where we have to revisit the descendants of a main character of the original. The most recent example of it would be Ghostbusters Afterlife. I hate that shtick. I hate that shtick of oh, this is this person's grandkid. They're going through the same thing. Oh no. Shut up. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. I get it. It's supposed to be endearing, but it's cheesy. It's cheesy and it's a clear cash grab. This one's a fan film, so it's kind of different, but not really. Yeah. So I guess to get into my thoughts on it now that I spent 20 minutes reading about it, I thought it was very much okay. I respect that it's considered one of the, one of the earliest slasher films, which is true, being that it's from the early 70s. Yeah, it was all right. It was a bit slow paced. It took a while for things to happen. The killings were very far apart in the film, which I'm not accustomed to in a slasher film. Killings are usually showed like very quickly in sequence with each other. These ones, like you see the first one at the beginning of the film, the next person is killed like I guess 5-10 minutes later, and then there's like a good hour of no killings. It's very, very spaced out in terms of the events of it. A lot of dialogue, which again I'm not accustomed to in a film, in a slasher film, or in a horror film in general, which is different for this time period. Nowadays we get a lot more dialogue similar to this. Modern films have more dialogue than horror, but they still combine an incredible amount of horror elements. This one doesn't have as much. The phone calls were obscene, but they were like, I don't get upset at that kind of thing easily, but they were just kind of like ridiculous. They were like, okay. If it weren't for the assumption at the end of the film that Peter was the killer, the side plot of her being of Jess being pregnant is kind of useless. Like if they didn't have that assumption that Peter's the killer, even though he's technically not. Not technically, he isn't. If they hadn't, made that assumption at the end of the film, which it's understandable, they had been fighting or whatever, then, that side plot is unnecessary. Yeah. I think the cops in this film, as with a lot of horror films, they're very incompetent. I'm surprised they didn't search the entire fucking house. That's what I don't get. They didn't search the entire, like, they're like, there's a killer. Somebody died in your house. We're not gonna check the entire house. We're only gonna investigate her bedroom. I don't know. My knowledge of how crime scenes are investigated, usually the entire house gets investigated. I don't understand. I would you'd think they would have checked everyone's bedroom. They would have checked the attic. Therefore, they would have found her body easily. Nobody really questioned the disappearance of the house mother after she got murdered. Nobody really questioned that. And then I just, the lack of a thorough search of the house is what I don't understand. As well as if the calls were coming from in the house, I understand it's hard to hear things that are happening in your attic, but there have been squirrels and rats in my attic before in the past. Obviously not now, thankfully, but in the past there have been squirrels in my attic and I could hear them very clear. So they would have heard footsteps, and this is an old house from the 70s, where you can hear the creaking wood. I feel like they would have heard it, as well as this person is yelling on the phone. You would think somebody would be like, hey, there's noise coming from the attic. Let's go check it out. I don't know. The logic, I mean, there's not a lot of, fair logic in horror films, but this one lacks it quite a lot. I don't think it was horrible because it was enjoyable. With horror films, it's kind of easy to ignore the lack of logic. But it was just ridiculous. There's just, I just can't believe they didn't fucking search the entire house. It's kind of, looking back on it now, it's reminding me of Malignant. Like, how did they not notice half of the shit that happened in Malignant? You know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel about this, except this movie was slightly better than Malignant. Malignant was just garbage. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's not enough explanation going on. It's not even very straightforward either. Like, I feel like if I looked into this film deeper, which I don't really feel like doing, I would notice a lot more issues with it than I already do. But yeah, it's definitely like, obviously I haven't seen the remakes, so I wonder how they are. I know, in I know at least in the 2019 one they fight back because the horror films that get made now, the final girl thing is a big trope. I mean, it always has been, but now it's even bigger of a trope of like, we gotta fight back, we gotta survive no matter what. You see it in like Split and like Old, even in Old, which isn't even like it's like a standard horror film, but like you see it a lot in horror films, where somebody needs to fight back, there needs to be a final girl. And that, again, it's very strongly influenced in today's horror films. So I think the fact that they didn't do anything, they're just like, let's just call the cops. It's different to me. Because even in older horror films, they try to fight back. These people didn't do shit. But yeah, so I know, I think in the 2019 remake, they at least felt, I think that's what the difference is, that they're like, we're all gonna fight back against this guy. She. I do feel more inclined to watch the remakes. I'm not sure if they're good or not. Because I know the 2006 one has like Michelle Trachtenberg, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and Lacey Shea Bear. The 2019 film has Imogen Poots, who I love. She's also in the Green Room. It also has Carrie Elwes in it from Princess Bride. So those have more recognizable names. And I mean, like, in these cult films, you're obviously typically not going to recognize the name. And if you do, it's usually the film that started off their career, kind of thing. So, yeah. I mean, it has had a big impact in being one of the earliest films. It inspired Halloween. Yeah, but, like, especially the concept of, like, the murders are coming from within. But I think the things that came out of it are better than this. I also don't understand just the local girl going missing. I don't know. It doesn't really, it doesn't add up to the plot. It doesn't make sense because nothing comes of it after they find her body. They're just like, oh, another person's dead. What does that have to do with the plot of the whole, murderer going after these sorority girls? And if they found her body, while the other bodies were still in the house, the house mothers and Claire's being in the attic, and then the other two's just being left in their rooms. Like, I just, there's a lot missing that I don't understand. And that's very indicative of a low budget film, but like, there are other low budget films that very easily convey every bit of information and fill any hole that could be left. You look at other cult films and early low budget horror films, and there aren't that many plot holes. This one has quite a few. It's not fantastic, but it is iconic in a way of what it started and what it influenced and how influential, how important it's been in the horror genre. But like, I don't know. I gave this 2.5 stars out of, or 2.5 out of 5 peaches. Sorry. My review on Letterboxd just says that men are fragile, because that's kind of the consensus I got from this film, is that it shows a lot the incompetence and the fragility of men when they don't get what they want. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I don't like cops anyways, but the cops in this film did not do shit. All they did was like make phone calls to the girl, and they're like, "Are you sure?" Blah 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 blah. And they're like, "We're gonna bug the phone and trace it." But then, like, tracing a phone call in the 70s took a lot of work. It wasn't as easy as it is today. So she would have to be on the phone for a long time just for the guy working in the phone building, whatever, to like figure out where the phone call was coming from. And until then, like, the only use that came of is like when the only use that the cops came of was that. And then when they were like, "Get out of the house, it's within the house." And even then, nothing happened after that. They didn't come to the house until like way after all the shit happened. Like, they were just, oh my God. The incompetence of them was just through the roof. It was like worse than anything else I've ever seen. They didn't do anything. They really did not. They didn't do a thorough investigation of, the scene of the crime. They didn't do a thorough investigation outside of the crime in general. They were not very much help in setting up, figuring out who it was. And they were not helpful in stopping the person. At the end, in the big whatever, they just showed up and they're like, "Oh, well, I guess it was Billy. I mean, I guess it was Peter. Let's just put Jess back in her bed." What? What? You're not going to, like, standard procedure would be take her to the hospital, get her checked out. You're not going to, what? What? It's like they're like, "Oh, well, that's that. Resume normal life." Like, it didn't make any fucking sense. I'm not even gonna lie. The ending did not make sense. Now that I'm actually like talking about this movie, I'm like, oh, this kind of fucking sucks. This movie actually kind of sucks. Yeah, I don't know. The murder of Barb was actually really, really, that was a good scene. I actually really enjoyed that one. It was very, very well shot, very well edited. I enjoyed it. But other than that, I don't know. I didn't, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't moved by this film in any way. Yeah. Olivia Hussey is really pretty. I guess that's all I have to say about this film, though. Here's just was not good. It wasn't incredible. I respect it, but it wasn't incredible. Yeah, so that's my review of Black Christmas. Thank you for listening. Next week is the monthly review. I'll be reviewing House of Gucci. I'm the only person in my friend group who has seen that film, so it'll just be me. Yeah, no guests, unfortunately, but that's okay. Thank you for listening. You can find me everywhere at Luckiest Peach, LVCKY Peach. I'm sorry I was talking quiet this week. I yelled quite a lot at work the other day. To the point that I've started to lose my voice, so I'm trying not to talk loud or yell, so I don't make it worse, to give it my throat time to heal. Yeah, but anyways, you can find me everywhere, Lucky Peach, LVCKY Peach. If you go to any of my socials, there is a link tree, also, as well as in the description of this episode. There's a link tree that'll take you to my Twitter, my Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, Letterboxd, the Discord associated with the podcast, YouTube, the podcast itself. Yes. What else? If you have any recommendations of films I should watch for Cult of the Month, or films that should be in a commentary or reviewed, don't be afraid to tweet me or email me at luckiestpeachpodcast@gmail.com. Give me your recommendations. I'm planning next year, so I'm very open to anything, any recommendations. Yeah, thank you to my patrons at patreon.com/Luckiest Peach. Thank you so much. If you are on Patreon, you get every episode a week early, as well as video versions of each episode, with the exception of episodes 1 through 30. Those are now public to everyone. The videos, I mean, where you can actually see me being a dumbass. Yeah, you also on Patreon at patreon.com/Luckiest Peach. There is a patron exclusive series of the Ingmar Bergman cinema retrospective. Yes. So that being said, that's all I have to say. See you next week for the review of House of Gucci. Thank you for listening again. Stay peachy.